So if I were looking over your shoulder this afternoon, where would I see you putting your capital to work, and what gives you the confidence in this scary time to do it? And is there anything you've in or you are intentionally avoiding in this market?
Yeah, so what I'm buying, and again, the advantage is time horizon, right? So, it's funny, like I like to have counter arguments against gold bugs. I am a gold bug, but I like to challenge the thesis. And I feel like a lot of people are shorter term than they like to say. I'm really long term. I like to buy things that with the intention that I will never have to sell, unless it's like a speculative junior miner. But when it comes to what I'm buying lately, it's been physical silver and a company called, I'm sure many have heard of it, Pan American Silver. So why do I like silver? I mean, I don't need to explain the bull case to you, but just on a high level, um, 70 to 80% of silver mine comes as a byproduct from mines that are primarily focused on things like copper, lead, zinc. So, what does that mean? That means that a rising silver price doesn't dictate whether more production can come online because you have it as a byproduct. So, there's supply. Bringing new supply online is a huge challenge. The applications for silver continue to grow. You know better than anybody, Andy, but we've reduced the amount of silver that we use in solar panels over the last 20 years. We use 1/10 the silver we used in solar panels 20 years ago, and yet demand keeps increasing because solar panels are more widespread. But that's kind of a common story. There's medical, there's military, there's applications in data centers, AI servers, and so forth. But there's also the fact that silver is used in bleeding edge technology. And I'll give you one example. This is what I like about it. This is why I have a long-term view on silver. So silver's been used in EV batteries for forever, right? 20 years, whatever it is. But if you look at what Samsung's doing now with their new solid state battery, it's super interesting. It's expected to use 20 times the amount of silver that current EV batteries use. It's expected to be commercialized in 2027. It has a 600-mile range, takes 9 minutes to charge up to 80%, and has a 20-year life. It's first going to come out as a premium battery for premium EVs, but if this goes mainstream, that's another application for silver that could probably consume 5 to 10% of silver's annual output, annual production. So that's just one example, but yeah, I wanted to give the kind of the thesis as to why I love silver. And that's why I've been buying physical silver. I don't think it's necessarily cheap historically, but I do think 45, $50 is the bottom. I think the upside over the next 10 years, and again, I have a long time horizon, it's probably $300-400 an ounce. And I don't view silver as a precious metal. I view it as an industrial metal. And that's why I'm bullish. And that's why I've been focusing lately, the last few weeks, on silver.
It's interesting you say that. First of all, Pan American is my largest holding. I love the stock.
Yeah.
Why don't you think it's a precious metal? I mean, unpack that a little bit, because it has a very long history of being one, and it is an industrial metal, and an industrial metal that is increasing in its uses, a plurality of uses, which is unusual for a commodity to begin with. But it's critical mineral. I guess, is it just because it's been stripped out of money? Is that why you think it's more industrial than if at all monetary these days?
Yeah, so it's a bit ideological, but the reason I say that, well, fundamentally is I think 70% of all silver now goes to an industrial application. I know the history of silver. I mean, the definition of a bank in China is a silver business, right? So I know silver's long monetary history, but for me to wrap my head around what I think is the proper thesis for silver, which is similar to copper, is to view it as an industrial metal, because that's where the majority of it is used. And so that's why I say that. But yes, I understand the history as a precious metal.
It's interesting. It's an interesting thought process, because on one hand, if you put silver at $200-300, your mind goes to, oh shit, what's going to happen to industry? What's going to happen to all these manufacturers? But you look at gold, and if I would have said to you 3, 4 years ago, when gold is $1,000, gold goes to 5,500. Is there going to be blood in the streets? Most people have said, hell yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
be crazy, right? But it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
And so at 7 or 8 or 9,000, does that mean life goes on? It kind of seems like it does because of what you just said, because gold has virtually no industrial uses. It's just universally accepted as money, as a monetary asset. So it's an interesting thought experiment, one where higher prices would certainly put it to the test.
Yeah.
I like your thoughts. So how does that play out for the average investor? What do you tell them? Do you tell them to buy things like Pan American silver, or do you tell them to buy physical metal if indeed it is primarily a monetary asset?
Yeah. So the way I view
I'm sorry, excuse me, a industrial asset. Pardon me.
industrial asset, yeah. So, the way I view investing in these critical metals, let's call them, that I believe belong in a portfolio, which is copper, silver, and gold. The nuances of how we define it are one thing, but how I would play the silver market is the same way how I'd play the gold market, which is like a Christmas tree. So the trunk, and it's based on size. It's just a good analogy. Your trunk is your physical metal. The bottom of the tree, which is usually the widest part, is your producers. And as you go up to the top of the tree, and as it gets thinner and thinner, that represents the developers and the explorers. So, and they're obviously, more risk involved as you go up the tree. But the base is the metal. More money for me personally belongs in producers. I like the leverage, which is the bottom of the tree. And then I dabble in a few developers and some explorers as well. But I think for most people, just have the trunk and the base of the tree, which is physical metal first, establish that position. That's the base. And then look at some of the producers. Personally, and I've done a lot of research on silver producers, and there aren't many, I don't see a better one than Pan American Silver. They produce at about 18, all in sustaining costs of about $18. They have about 500 million ounces of reserves. They have over 1 billion ounces in resources. They're multi-jurisdictional. They're not a pure play silver producer, but they're majority. They have a really, really good gold mine in Brazil. That's kind of their cash flow machine, but great assets in Mexico. Long reserve life. They're producing about 20 million ounces a year. So going back to I like to buy things forever. Pan American fits that model perfectly. Obviously, it's not without risk. Very vulnerable to the price of silver, but it's a set and forget for me. I'll wake up in 10 years and I think that stock will be, 5, 6, 7x easy.
Yeah, I've always looked at my metals as assets I hope I never need to use. If I do, I'm damn glad I have it, not just for sky falling. Opportunities present themselves. Dry powder is always good, but there are very few things you can give to your kids that will
Yeah.
have sentimental and intrinsic value in the year 3000, long after the bills in both of our wallets are hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian. I don't know what the Canadian version of the
Oh,
Smithsonian is, but as an example of what once used to be. Interesting. I think we see the world in a very similar way. I like your macro perspective. I like your holistic perspective. I think it's very important, maybe never been so important. Um, and again, to me, it's less about predicting markets, more about understanding how the world is changing. And